Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. Today I am bringing you my April reading wrap up. I am filming this on my lunch break, which means I have about an hour to talk about the 9 books that I read last month. I'm also filming this on what feels like the hottest day of the year, so if I slowly start to melt as we go through this video, then that is why. But the way that I've structured this video is we're going to talk about the standalones that I read first. I actually read quite a few sequels last month, which is really good for me, but I know that some people aren't going to care about those. All of these reviews are going to be spoiler free, by the way, but I think it makes sense to start with the standalones. So the first book that I have on my list is Experienced by Kate Young. This is a contemporary rom-com. It's one of those where it's very much focusing on the main character's personal journey. However, I thought the romance in this was also really well done. Sometimes with books like this, the romance feels kind of secondary, and I end up liking the book overall, but I don't really care about the romance. However, I didn't find that with this. I felt really invested in these characters. So in this, we are following a main character called Bet, who I think she's around 30. She came out later in life and she's been with her girlfriend for a few months. She feels like they're really happy. However, at the start of the book, her girlfriend May turns to her and says, "I think we need to take a break for a few months because I feel bad that you have never experienced dating as a queer woman. I feel like it would be really beneficial if you go out and experience dating, and then we can get back together and I'll feel more confident that you actually want to be with me and that you're not settling with me just because I'm the first woman that you've dated." If you're listening to that and thinking, wow, that feels really patronising, then yes, I had the same reaction. Bet does end up going along with it, and you see her go on all of these dates and kind of figure out what she wants in life and in her relationship. I gave this 5 stars, even though I had some issues with the pacing and it started to drag a little bit in places. I loved Bet as a main character. I thought she was very realistically flawed, and I really liked the friendships in this. I loved how Bet's friends were really there for her, but also they weren't afraid to call her out when she was being unreasonable or self-centered or selfish. If you are looking for a book that feels like a British rom-com, then would really recommend this. I could picture this working so well as a movie. Next up we have The Ministry of Time by Kaliane Bradley, which I think I ended up giving a 3 stars. It's probably more like a 2.5, which makes me think I should have just given it a 2, but I had so many complex feelings on this book. It's marketed as a sci-fi, however, I don't know whether I would agree with that. It has time travel, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's a sci-fi. It also has a love story, but I wouldn't really call this a romance, and it turns into a thriller towards the end, which is where it completely lost me. It felt very chaotic. It's set in the near future where the British government have discovered time travel. However, they want to experiment with it a little bit first to make sure that it's safe, and they decide to bring forward people from the past who would have died in their own time periods. Our main character works for the government and she is assigned to look after one of these people. So she ends up living with this guy who's from the past, and the conversations that they end up having, to me it felt very surface level. Like if you could imagine meeting someone from the past, the kind of conversations that you would have, that's what happens in this book. It doesn't really push it any further. I was expecting this book to be about how time travel affects these people from the past, and there were some good conversations. There was a point where one of these people, they start talking about how they feel this pressure to do something meaningful with their life because they've been given this second chance, and I really liked that. I wanted more moments like that. I liked the found family element and how it brought together all of these eccentric characters, but one of the main themes also felt shoehorned in at the end, and I found that really jarring. Next up we have Distress Signals by Catherine Ryan Howard. So I actually read 2 Catherine Ryan Howard books in April because I wanted to make a video where I ranked all of her books, and I only had 2 left to read. So the one that I started with was her debut, which is called Distress Signals. This is following a guy whose girlfriend goes missing supposedly while on a work trip to Spain. However, when he starts digging into things, he tracks her disappearance to a cruise ship, and he's thinking, why was she lying to me? Like, what happened there? And there's some stuff that's revealed quite near the beginning, which I'm not going to go into because I feel like it's better to not know too much. The pacing did feel a little bit slow in the middle. It never lost my interest. I was still fully really engaged and I wanted to find out what was going to happen. However, what made this go from a 3 to a 3.5 or a 4 was there was a twist that I did not see come in, and my jaw literally dropped. I was shocked, especially because this is quite an old thriller now. I say old, it came out in like 2016, but it's an older thriller and it's difficult enough for thrillers to surprise me even now. I really enjoyed this. I think it would be a really good book to read while on a summer holiday, maybe not if you're going on a cruise. The main issue I had was the pacing. However, if you're looking for a well-crafted mystery, I think this is a backlist book that you should check out. The next Catherine Ryan Howard book I read was Rewind, which in my opinion is the darkest out of all of her books. It opens with a graphic murder that is captured on camera, and throughout the book you're trying to work out, okay, first of all, who was murdered, who did it, but also why was it captured on film. There's a few different perspectives that you're following, and I think there were too many POVs. It felt a little, in fact not even a little, it felt unnecessarily complicated. At the start of each chapter it says stuff like fast forward or press pause, and that indicates whether you're moving backwards or forwards or staying like central in time, which was an interesting little detail, but not enough for me to love the book. The ending wasn't that impactful for me though, and I think it's because we were moving around all of these different characters and I struggled to care about any of them. I wouldn't go out of my way to recommend it. However, if you have enjoyed Catherine Ryan Howard's books in the past, then I wouldn't want to put anyone off from reading it. Next up we have Slaying the Vampire Conqueror by Carissa Broadbent, which is technically a standalone. You can read it as a standalone, but it's more of a companion novel. It's set in the same world as the Crowns of Nyaxia series, the first book being Serpent and the Wings of Night, one of my favourite fantasy romance books. I love the way that Carissa Broadbent writes tension, and I thought that the main characters in this also had really good chemistry and banter. We're following a main character who is part of this religious organisation. She essentially worships the goddess of fate. These acolytes deliberately blind themselves, and that enables them to see the threads of the world so they can predict the future or see into the past. I really liked the way that the magic was described in this actually. She's also an assassin, and at the start of the book a group of vampires invade their land and she is sent to be the one to assassinate the leader. But maybe she falls in love with him instead. As I said, I really enjoyed this. I gave it 4 stars. I thought there was a good balance between the romance and the plot. I think this could be a good introduction to the Crowns of Nyaxia world, but it depends on what your priority is. If you're more concerned about the romance, then yeah, I think this is a really well done standalone romance. However, there's stuff to do with the world building that you're told in this book, and it's not spoilery, but in the main series you get this information in a more drawn out way, and I think that feels more satisfying. In this book you're just told stuff and there's not as much emotion there. That's what I'm trying to say. Moving on to some sequels, and first up we have Memories of Ice by Stephen Erikson. This is the 3rd book in the Malazan Book of the Fallen series. If you have read this series or you've read this book and you want my spoilery thoughts, then I do have a 30-something minute video talking about it, so I'll leave that linked in the cards and in the description. But in terms of my spoiler-free thoughts, if you're interested in knowing whether I'm glad that I continued this series, then the answer is yes. Books 2 and 3 for me have been so much more enjoyable compared to book 1, which I thought was just okay. It does feel slow and it does feel dense. However, it's not like there's loads and loads of long descriptions of the setting. Stephen Erikson, in my opinion, prioritises dialogue and interactions between characters. I think there's 2 different experiences that a lot of people have with Malazan. Some people pick it up and think, wow, this is confusing, I don't have a clue what's going on and I hate it. But then you also get some people who will pick it up and think, I don't have a clue what's going on, I'm really confused, but I love it because I'm so intrigued to find out what is going on and to gain more knowledge and piece everything together. I think if you can check out some spoiler-free guides beforehand, then that would really help you to know what to expect. What's also helped me is I'm buddy reading this series with my partner who has read it before. It's one of his favourite series of all time, and it's nice having someone that I can talk to as I'm reading. Sometimes I'll think I'm confused, but then we'll have a conversation and I'll tell him what I think I've just read, and I'll realise I've taken in quite a lot. It's just that I don't have the wider context yet, but then that will come later and it'll feel really satisfying as things click into place. So yeah, really glad that I did decide to continue this series, and I will be picking up the 4th book, hopefully towards the end of May, but it might be early June. Next up we have Apprentice to the Villain by Nicole Maehrer, which is the sequel to Assistant to the Villain. I gave the first book in the series 4 stars, and while I didn't enjoy the second book as much, I still feel really invested in this romance. It got really hyped because of BookTok, however, a lot of people I've seen reading it on BookTube haven't been enjoying it, and I can understand why, because it's very funny, or at least I find it funny. However, humour is of course very subjective, so I understand the humour not working for everyone. It basically follows a young woman called Evie who accepts a job working for the villain of this world, and it's kind of an office romance. His lair feels like a modern day office, but it's set within this fairy tale world. It reminds me a lot of Shrek. I feel like if you've watched the Shrek films, then you'll know it's set in this very generic fairy tale like world, and it kind of pokes fun at itself. This feels to me like satire. It doesn't take itself too seriously, and I love that. I also like the dynamic between Evie and the villain. Evie is a typical sunshine heroine, whereas the villain, he is not like the typical dark villain that you might find in a high romantasy. This feels to me more like a cozy fantasy. So he's a villain, but also is he really? Like, you're told that he does evil stuff, but it almost feels like a parody and like he's a caricature, and for some reason that just works for me. Even though I gave the second book 3 stars, I will read the 3rd book when it comes out this summer, I think. I want to see how things wrap up, and because this is a slow burn romance, I feel like there's more still to come with these characters. The final book that I read in April was Vera Wong's Guide to Snooping on a Dead Man by Jessie Q Sutanto. This is the 2nd book in the Vera Wong series, and I had very high expectations going into this because Vera Wong's Unsolicited Advice for Murderers was one of my favourite books of last year, an easy 5 stars. This I gave 4 stars, but I'm not disappointed because I don't think it was ever going to live up to the first book, but I think if you liked the first book, you're going to like this one as well. So this series follows Vera Wong, who is a 60-something Chinese woman living in San Francisco. She owns a tea shop in Chinatown, and in the first book she finds a dead body in her tea shop and decides to help the police investigate. This series really though is about found family, and loneliness is a big theme running throughout both books. So Vera is the kind of person who collects people, and it's really about how she affects people's lives, and I just find it so heartwarming. I find it really cozy. Obviously this is a mystery series. It's a cozy mystery, nothing graphic or anything like that, but just to be aware of, like, it's not all light and fluffy. The main reason this got 4 stars and not 5 stars is because I noticed some inconsistencies with the characterization. We're told at times one thing about a character and then we're told something else, and some of the humour felt a bit forced. Characters, for example, making assumptions about other characters, which I just don't think they would have done that. Or characters saying that they don't understand something when we've been told stuff which would mean that they would understand it. I don't know whether that was the case in the first book and I just didn't pick up on it, but yeah, that was the only thing that brought my rating down. But I will continue with this series if there are going to be any future books. That does bring me to the end of this video, so thank you for watching. If you made it this far, let me know in the comments if you've read any of these books and what you thought of them. Let me know your favourite book of April. Mine was probably Experienced by Kate Young because it was the only book that I gave 5 stars, and my most disappointing was probably The Ministry of Time. But let me know if you have any thoughts or feelings on these books. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Click subscribe if you would like to see more videos from me, but otherwise I will see you next time. Bye.